Oh! Love comes from God. Context. Yeah. It's for sure agape. This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that knows Jesus Christ. Trina Bear, I'm getting context by reading the book of 1 John. Which is distracting me of what we were just talking about. Damn it.
Illogical conclusions. It's great. This is the great start of a conversation.
So,
it's funny. Probably only bears could be the only people that could tell me I'm making an illogical conclusion and me not getting upset about it.
So, like, in the statement, so verse 8 in 1 John chapter 4, verse 8 is what you're referring to. Whoever does not know, or whoever does not love, does not know God, because God is love. And so the basis of our disagreement is you're saying that God is love, and my disagreement is because when you say love, I guess know that this passage was written in Greek, and the English version of love is not necessarily accurate. And so it's not necessarily that we disagree on God is love, but it's which version of which definition of the Greek version of love are you using to describe God? Because if we're using agape, then that would make sense. But pretty much any other definition of love, according to the Greek translations, would not make sense. Are you tracking?
Yeah, definitely. But Jesus was like, Peter, do you love me? And it was phileo. Peter, do you love me? It was phileo. Peter, do you love me? It was agape.
Ooh, that is a good point.
So even Jesus intermixed the love stuff. But
yeah, that's a very good point. I think that for us to get to the down to the foundation of this gravy, we need to read the New Testament in Greek.
That's why you get the Touch Bible app. It's the best. You can touch on the word and it tells you in Greek. But still, like, I think that, so going back to the church, well, my illogical conclusion, first of all, I use a mathematical formula. So maybe it's not a theory. Maybe it is an actual law that I created just right now because it's a formula.
You just created a law?
Yeah, I created a law. So check it out. If God equals love, right? And how would I say it in an equation? Basically, Jesus established that he could not have the devil in him because if the devil was in him, then a house divided could not stand. That it would collapse, right? So if God equals love, and love equals no fear, and God has love and he has hate, then love cannot be the opposite of hate. Only.
Oh, I see. You're coming from a doubt-based perspective that if you indeed love God, you will have no doubt, thus no fear, and thus no hate, because you fully trust God. And by that perspective, according to your definition of love, if someone is fucked up and like a pedophile and they attempt to say, I love this person, that automatically falls outside the morality of your agreement, which holds your entire agreement true.
You kind of lost me there, but it sounded good.
Yeah, so I just expanded on what the fuck you were saying to make it more.
Right. Yeah, you dropped some gravy into my gravy.
Yeah, but basically, what you're saying makes 100% sense It's just I was coming from a different perspective, but once I understood your perspective, I was able to expand upon it.
Look at what this is. This is a difference between men and women. Women talk about the 5 love languages. Men, we cause Bosnia Bear to be like, fellas, this is not madness. we we just made love so complicated. But yeah. So wait, what was the point you said about pedophiles?
Well, so it's like if you say that God is love and pedophiles say that I love children, then you, by those two statements, you're in the shithole, which was my initial disagreement. But then once I understood your perspective, according to your perspective, if a pedophile says, "Oh, I love a child," they're not really truly in like honoring God, morality, loving a child. What they're doing is lying to themselves about how they feel about abusing a victim. And so that's not true love, which applies more logic to your statement.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, the English version of love has been completely grounded.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's where I was coming from. Is given the various Greek definitions of love, I would like, and you were saying God is love. I was trying to apply all Greek definitions simultaneously. But then, as you told me more about your perspective, I was like, oh, here's how like these kinds of like morality versions of love and like apply, and how these other versions don't.
Perfect love casts out all fear, is what the scripture says. Dariva. Now, faith. I did make a formula for faith once. It was like sight times 0, which is kind of silly to say, right? Because why would you start a formula? Sight times 0 plus. It was plus risk times certainty.
Well, so I find this fascinating to attempt to make a mathematical equation that applies to faith. And I wouldn't say it's sight times 0. It would be sight raised to the x power times risk raised to the x power times uncertainty.
No, because once again, look it is another mathematical equation in the scripture which says we walk by faith, not by sight. So according to scripture, like faith is
I understand where you're coming from, and that's why I raised sight to the x degree exponential, is because even though we walk by faith, not by sight, that does not automatically mean that we always walk by faith with 0 sight. There are a great many circumstances which the Lord blesses us with a little bit of sight and then asks us to make a leap of faith, which is why sight would have to be raised to the exponential.
Yeah, I could that's well, look, I'm not completely ridiculous in my opinions, but this would be a fascinating book, though. If we had a book of equations of biblical commodities like faith, freedom,
well, so like, dude, honestly, I would feel uncomfortable if we made like a written version of this, because the end of the book of Revelation says, "Do not add or subtract, otherwise, basically, you're fucked." And as amusing as this is, I don't want to risk that. Like, these are funny jokes, but like, I don't want to make literature about this shit.
We're literally adding and subtracting, but it doesn't say do not multiply or divide.
You fucking grabbler! How dare you!
I could have written the Talmud with that one. We're not adding or subtracting. It's the law of matter, right? That
only making things fractal. I swear, there's no addition or subtraction. Oh.
What if the what's the law of thermodynamics? What's the law that says
law of thermodynamics that you cannot add nor subtract to the overall energy of the universe.
Matter cannot be created nor destroyed.
That's it. Yeah.
So did I, speaking on that note, did we ever talk about the idea that if the Earth is an egg, if you got the dome above it and then you got Sheol below it, and then you got the plane in the middle, and
Mm-hmm.
then if we release carbon up into the dome, then it goes down, it starts sliding down along the dome on the edges, right? Down past the other side of the ice wall or whatever. And then it goes underneath into Sheol, which is interesting because it's like Sheol, which is like oil, Sheol, right? So then that carbon goes down underneath, and then we suck it up from underneath in Sheol, and we get the oil again. We burn it back
Well,
up.
so even according to that model, you're not accounting for the physical area of Sheol and the accumulation of oil in the physical area of Sheol in the bottom portion of this egg-shaped physical realm. Does that make sense?
What do you mean? They'll expand because
So you're saying that
conclusion.
as shit like goes to the edges of this like egg-shaped thing, that like at the top is the firmament, in the middle is the plane, the bottom is Sheol. And so you're saying that
Right.
as this carbon goes to the top, leaks down towards the sides of the firmament, that's how, like once it passes the firmament, that's how we then suck up oil, like oil. But that's not accounting for the entirety of the bottom half of the egg shape that you're describing.
The bottom half is Sheol that has all the oil.
Well, oil is obviously not entirely compromised of just oil.
What if
So,
hell is just a big lake of oil?
perspective,
Fire, like a physical pit of fire. Not only would that fuck with like the spiritual realities that I'm aware of, but that would also
You literally cut
give
out for a
whatever
whole
spiritual
minute.
entities that were exposed to said fire some sort of stimulation. And that, according to all torture techniques, any sort of consistent stimulation assists in stabilizing the psychological condition of your victim. And if hell is as bad as the Bible describes it, I don't think there would be any like potential stabilizing factor for one psychological condition.
You
That
cut
being
out.
said,
You
from the
cut out for
Catholic
a whole.
perspective, with the whole what's it called, purgatory nonsense, yeah, then you would want a some sort of like fire and like brimstone kind of bullshit, because that would provide a stabilizing position for which the soul could then unfuck whatever the hell they had to deal with in their life, and then thus purify themselves through their experience of purgatory, and then earn, quote unquote, earn, hilarious statement, earn themselves a position to heaven. Obviously nonsense, but I see where they're coming from. See what I'm saying?
Dude, I I just so I Sheol. First of all, you cut out for like a
What?
whole minute. When you were driving, you cut out for a whole minute, and you were talking apparently, and you came back in, and you were mid sentence, and like I I we didn't hear what you were saying for like a whole minute. It was hilarious. Um, so Sheol if
Are you still
Sheol and
thinking?
hell is,
Oh, wait, why can't I
huh?
hear you? Are you on mute?
You can't hear me? No, you cut out.
I got you.
You
Thanks, bro.
cut,
Yeah, Trina, I can't hear you, bro.
huh? Really? Hmm.
Once I get
And
out of this place,
anyone
I'm
else
gonna
hear
try
me,
and.
or is it?
Oh, I cut out.
How's JapJap in the
Yeah, thank you. Oh, yes, please.
Uh,
Oh, thanks, mate.
can you guys not hear me? Am I muted? Am I muted? I think I'm gonna have to.
Trina Bear, radio check.
Is it
Radio check.
Radio Shack? You can't hear me.
Oh, you can hear me now.
Okay.
Haha.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, so I had my little Bluetooth,
The chat.
and I guess for whatever reason that decided to like stop working halfway through. So that was my bad.
The chat is dying because it's like it freezes and all of a sudden it comes back. You're like mid sentence and you're walking in the store
Oh, so my video cut out too?
for like a whole minute.
No shit. That's funny.
And they're like Nick is like, wait, how is JapJap in the store right now?
Guys, I recently upgraded my spiritual levels, so now I know how to teleport.
That's about right. So Sheol is what is that tapping noise?
So that tapping noise is because my air conditioning on my very old car is not working properly, and I don't desire to spend money on this old car to fix it before I sell it and buy a truck so I can move up north and buy a homestead. So I just have to deal with this constant clicking noise, and like this is what I had to listen to literally the entire like 6+ hour drive back and forth from California when I was visiting the various bears.
That's funny.
But what's kind of cool is when you initially hear it, you first think oh, it's gonna drive me insane. But then after listening to it for several hours, you realize it doesn't drive you insane, and then you learn that, dude, Bajo Bear fixed it in like 15 seconds, and it worked for like an hour almost, and then it broke again.
Dude,
But
my wrist hurt.
another fun issue of my really poor
Bajo
quality car
Yeah.
is right now I can't leave my car because when I just turned it off, the key is stuck in the ignition. So now I have to turn my car back on and then go reverse and then back or forward again and hope that unfucks my car. And I may have to do that several times. So bear with me here.
Oh, we all know the Jimmy rig. So Sheol is where the oil is. And what if hell is just a gigantic ocean of oil? And that would make sense because it could be lit on fire and it would be black. If hell is just throwing a bunch of spirits or whatever people into a black oil lake.
The reason why it wouldn't work though is because separation, like God is the source of all energy. Fuck. And like hell is the separation from everything that is God. And so if you are in
a like hell kind of scenario, according to the Bible, according to my opinion, then you've got like a scenario where there's no energy, nothing. It's just infinite blackness. You're all alone, and you have no communion with anyone for all of eternity, for however long that is.
Not necessarily, because like Monsters Inc., according to the Gospel of Monsters Inc., Disney Pixar.
So the reason why I would argue that a lot of I just escaped the JapJap mobile.
I thought you were gonna like magically appear in a library this time.
No, not this time. So I'm thinking that the whole concept of hell being this like fiery purgatory kind of area comes literally from the Catholic concept of purgatory.
Might not
And
be fiery if it's just a big ocean of oil, black oil.
well, so like the Catholic concept of like like damnation beyond like once you die has forms of spiritual energy, and they describe it in fire and their purgatory kind of narratives. The biblical concept is an absence of God, thus absence of energy, which is a different thing to describe an experience.
Where does the Bible say that? I know that Jesus talked about Lazarus, the guy who was
Yep.
like, I just want a drop of water on my tongue.
Oh,
Whatever.
that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. And how he was like, please, just let me send send an angel to my brothers. And Jesus responded like, no, like they've got like they could listen to Moses. If they don't listen to him, like they're basically fucked.
Yeah, I gotta
That
read
is a
that
good
one
point.
again because that's one of those.
But
That's one of those stories that does not get talked about much, and I bet there's some gravy in there. I gotta go back over that one.
well, yeah. So like the basis of the story is that there was a rich man, and he like had like all the lollipops, fancy pants, did a great job like in the capitalist system, and then after he fucking died, it turns out that the beggar named Lazarus, who was at his door this whole time, who he was an asshole to, now Lazarus is in heaven and he's talking to Jesus, and then this rich dude is like in hell and bitching about him being a
Does it
douchebag.
say he's in hell, or they said there's like a chasm, like a
Well, yeah,
divide between them?
they don't specifically say he's in hell, but
They might have said
given,
Sheol though.
yeah, they say Sheol, but they don't specifically say hell. And like the reason why I guess would believe that it was hell is because it does specifically, you're right, mention that chasm, and it mentions how that like, there's no way for spirits on the two ends of that chasm to reunite, and that's like what I understand as the main difference between heaven and hell is heaven is a spiritual arena in which you have access to God, and hell is a similar spiritual arena, but the main difference is you do not have access to God. And the, I guess, like, best way for us to understand how that works in our like limited physical realm is energy, and that God is the source of all energy. And so if we are in a spiritual realm that lacks energy, lacks God, then it's significantly different from a realm that has the presence of God. And the Bible has a multitude of specific descriptors for what the heavenly realms are like.
But would
But
you say would you say fear has energy? Monsters Inc.
Yes,
According to the
fear has energy,
Disney.
but I would say that the energy that fear has, it's similar to the bottom half of a sine wave. So with any sort of energetic output, you've got your baseline, and the sine wave goes above the baseline and below the baseline. And the the quicker this energy surpasses the baseline going up and down, the quicker it does that, the higher the frequency. The lower it does that, the lower the frequency. And so fear, technically, you're right, does have an energetic presence.
So low
But
it's
that,
Sheol.
what's up?
Such a low frequency that it goes below the plane into Sheol.
Well, so that isn't entirely correct either, because if you have a deep fear, but it's applied at a very low amplitude, then it wouldn't necessarily go deep enough to apply to your current hypothesis. Because I see where you're going, but once you apply amplitude to frequency, then your argument falls apart. According to the laws of electronics.
I was just trying to come up with some gravy here.
Yeah, dude, it sounds great, and I'm trying to work it out. I'm just trying to help you.
Look it. This is what I believe, and I'm sticking to it. Sheol is oil. Sheol. And that, why do they keep wanting to inject oil into us? Why is every single medication and everything that they inject into us in the hospital contain some sort of oil byproduct? Because they're trying to inject hell into us. Well, not hell. Hell might be a graveler.
No, it's much simpler.
Sheol.
Much simpler.
What is it?
So, you know how the human body's about 70-ish% water?
Bosnia
and it just so happens that the Earth is about 70-ish% water. And it just so happens that all truths just so happen to be fractal. And it just so happens that oil is very similar to blood as to a human being. And it just so happens that the Bible's do not consume blood 1 billion fucking times. So yeah, if a satanic pharmaceutical industry wants to corrupt individuals, then forcing them, or not forcing, but convincing them and tricking them to take the blood of the earth is one of the most demonic things you can do. And then we add the whole big S science and the whole religion of big S science and the priests and shit of that, and they're like, oh, now pharmaceuticals become that much worse.
That's interesting. I never heard of oil as the blood of the earth.
Yeah, man. It's a whole fucking thing.
She oil.
Yeah, or they're just injecting hell. Either or.
Shell oil. She oil. Come
on. Shell oil, dude.
How do you doubt this Sheol, shell oil? This is obvious gravy that you're passing up. You're passing up the gravy. But the blood of the earth is gravy too. Is there a way we can both be right? The blood of the earth. How do we know oil is the blood of the earth, though?
Proportions.
Proportions? Where does oil come from?
Naturally made within the confines of the earth, similar to the process of how blood is made.
Interesting. You were in the military. You know the oil is basically the military-industrial complex. They are one in one. They are. You look like you're downloading gravy.
I'm trying to make both of our opinions work in the same way. and it's exceedingly difficult.
It's, well, the belly of the okay, if with the egg theory of the
Well,
devil,
so my best hypothesis
the
is
shield.
to make both of our theories work together. Is that as the carbon goes down the sides of the egg, that and like goes past the flat plane, it's then in these bottom portions of Sheol that is the natural like oil producing like portion of the body of Earth of Mother Nature. But even then, that's not really accurate because of like the whole Russian experiment of the Carillion borehole and other various other experiments that disprove the egg theory that you're describing. But I'm trying.
I am just trying. I think it's hilarious. Bossy said, "How many pots have you smoking?" I don't know if that's an accidental language lost in translation statement, or if he meant to say it like that.
No, that's a legit question. He's like, JapJap Bear, how many little bowls of marijuana have you smoked?
No,
How much of that wacky tobacco have you ingested?
but that's the funniest part was the way he said it. It's not how much pot have you smoking; it's how many pots have you smoking. I haven't spoken any actually. I am smoke free tonight. I'm just enjoying the nonsense. See, this is what discussing the 5 love languages leads to. Nonsense. Entitlement. I missed a lot of you. How long, Bear? Was it a good chat?
Oh yeah, I love talking to Long Bear.
Oh yeah.
In fact, now that you mention it, he was supposed to come back, but he never did.
Well, I mean, it's probably late for him. He's. I was going through a really tough couple of nights, and Long Bear was like the guy I was talking to.
Nice.
He's good dude. 100% intentional. Okay, you're okay. You spoke like that intentionally. That's funny. What else? So we determined that shell oil is Sheol, and JapJap Bear strongly disagrees. Says that the oil is the blood of the earth. Because I'm like, well, what if? Okay, so if Sheol is oil, then if it is Sheol, then it is of a wicked place, in that it's a giant gravel to make it where we need oil, because we should be getting our energy from not Sheol, but above, possibly. I don't know anything about Tesla, like this whole idea of electricity being in the air. Have you looked into that stuff?
Ooh, I just thought of a way that your perspective sounds even better.
Okay.
So, based on Tesla technology, where it's like you draw energy, like infinite energy from the air, but with this like shell oil technology, you're drawing a relatively limited energy source from the ground. So instead of drawing it from the air, you're drawing it from the ground.
Right.
It's significant. And in addition to that, the power effectiveness of Tesla type technologies is on average your average oil combustion engine has an efficiency of like 1 to 3%. It's like insanely small. I think I've got the numbers wrong, but it's insanely small. But then compared to that, Tesla type engines are double or triple the energy efficiency capacity. And so the higher capacity energy sources coming from above, the lower energy capacity sources coming from below. And if we were to apply Tesla technologies, then everyone would basically have free energy. But because of our oil-based combustion, we live in this like petrodollar slavery central banking system. There's a lot of potential from your perspective right there, bro.
Yeah, I wish I understand more about Tesla technology. So, wait, Shawnee Bear asked if it's always been Train a Bear. Well, No, I just had my regular. So I had my regular Instagram, which is Chris Trina, and then I discovered Owen. I was in his Instagram streams on his previous screen name, and then I mentioned about how the IQ test is a hoax, and then he banned me. He's very upset about that, and so I had to create another screen name just to be able to go into his streams because I like the streams. So I was like, I guess I'll just make a screen name, and it was Train a Bear at first, and then I was like, well, I want to be a bearer of Christ because that's what my name means. Christopher means bearer of Christ. My name is Christopher Traina, so I went with Traina Bearer. So it's been that for quite some time. I also have an alter ego called the Squirt Zone, and I made that channel, and it features like Owen's Ira videos. I mean, ultimately, I wish if I don't watch enough Owen, but it would be awesome if every time he did the Ira voice and did something in Ira on Instagram, if there was a place to get that, that'd be funny. How long ago? What? But what is
How
Boss?
long ago did you get banned for
Oh,
bringing up the IQ test comment?
uh, probably about a year ago. Probably about a year ago. A little over, maybe like a couple months over that. But no, I haven't been in the bear community as long as a lot of other bears. And that's why I think at first everyone was thinking I was a gamma because it seemed like I wanted attention. When I'm just like really friendly and I like to talk to people, it's like, oh, he wants attention. He's on people's streams. It's like, nah, I like talking to people. Like it's like I have a lot I'm doing in life. Like I got a lot of things going on, but I enjoy talking to people, especially people that are not crazy. Although it's kind of funny to say because most people think we're the crazy ones. But um, you remember what, Warbeard? When I got banned? That'd be funny if you remembered that.
Apparently, Warbear remembers when you got banned.
Warbeard. Oh, Sam. Is that Sam? Is that the guitar dude, Sam Meter?
Yeah, Sam Meter's the amazing guitarist.
Oh,
Like,
I was
blessed by God, the guitarist who has amazing skill sets.
I was showing my wife that because my wife just thinks guitars are just like a
Oh,
bunch of
also Sam. So Trainer Bear, shut up for a second.
yeah.
I love you, but shut up for a second. Sam, are you still down to go on tomorrow? Trainer Bear, continue, and we'll just wait for Sam to do his thing.
My I showed when Sam was in. I showed my wife it. I'm like, hey, look at this guy. He's amazing because it's like,
Yes,
yeah,
dude, he's gonna be on tomorrow. Fuck yeah!
yes. I found him about 2.5 years ago. I just didn't engage. I observed with Owen. Yeah, I mean that's the thing though. It's like I don't know. I'm like a social dude. So if I'm on someone's Instagram, I'm gonna chat and kind of say things, and that's why when he
And
banned me,
apparently get yourself banned on accident.
yeah, when he banned me, I didn't get butthurt at first. I was kind of like, well, that was gay. He banned me because, like, at first, because it's weird. It's like, why can't I? What happened? Why can't I see his screen name or anything? And then I'm like, oh, I think he banned me, and for making an IQ. I deserved it. I get it. I probably did because I went into his house and was criticizing. But the funny thing is, a few months later, he did change his mind on IQ tests. But
Well,
it's designed by the Jew to basically make it where the Jew does well on the IQ test. But
like the original purpose of the IQ test, I read this a couple years back. It was not originally was not designed as a standard of like, oh, everyone should take an IQ test to see how they compare to everyone else in the society. No, the IQ test was originally designed for mentally handicapped individuals, and it was designed to specifically categorize where they stood as compared to the rest of society to best assist them in getting like more mental and social development. and that's where originally we got the terms of like retard, idiot, moron, and like stuff like that. And then over the years, in the 1917 or 1918, I forget which year, but that the IQ model was then applied to the Army. And after that IQ model was applied to the Army as a part of the standard admissions as part of the draft, that's when the IQ test got grabbled. And ever since then, the IQ test has been like just fucking nonsense. But originally, the IQ test was designed to help out people with mental incapacities, but very shortly thereafter, it was.
So you're saying literally. I don't use the word literally. I know you do, and you somehow made it 3 syllables when I think it's supposed to be 4.
Literally. I make it 4 syllables.
No, you don't.
Literally.
No. You say literally. You say literally.
Literally. Yeah, you're right. I do.
That's
You're
why
right. I do
everyone
that.
loves the way you say. Everyone loves the way you say literally. What was that? Literally, it was a retarded test.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and with the best of intentions to help out the retards, but then it got grappled after during World War One.
Literally a retarded test. See, I was right. I was not. I got banned, but Sam said we all deserve to be banned. That is like some wisdom right there. It's like that's almost like a "Thus saith the Lord." All you deserve to be banned. None of you shall be banned from heaven, but Jesus, but God. No.
So
Yeah,
because you said "Thus saith the Lord."
uh-huh.
Whenever you know how John chapter 1 talks about how it's like in the beginning was the Word, and the word was God, and the Word is with God, like, and everything was made for God and with God and through God, like John chapter 1. When it's because Jesus is the Word of God. When I read that a past couple of months ago, I then started to apply like, oh, so whenever I read the Old Testament, and the Old Testament says, and the word of the Lord came to so and so and like said such and such.
Yeah, that's gravy. I like that.
I imagine Jesus saying that.
That's really, really good, dude. That's really good. I think whenever
Dude, for so long, I was always just like brainwashed by like oh, Jesus is all loving, blah blah blah, like the American Jesus Christian cock. But then when you apply like, and the word of the Lord came to so and so and said so and such, like Jesus came to so and said such and such. When you apply that shit to the Old Testament, it's like Jesus came to so and said this country is fucked 9 ways from Sundays. Like, so many times. And like Jesus is such a badass when you apply it that way.
Oh, that's crazy. I wonder if there's someone that Jesus came to recently. Although the Jews are claiming they're hanging out with the Messiah. With Warbeard said, didn't he say on your stream he's been watching Owen's stream since Owen's beginning at streams? Is that what he said yesterday? I know Chris Denisi, he was one of the 72 in the lawsuits. He was like, he remembered watching Owen when he was still cutting trees in New York. I jumped in right when Owen was discovering that we didn't go to the moon. That was a pretty funny time to jump into when he was drinking White Claws by the fire, yelling at the moon. That was pretty funny. And then I kind of left for a while. I stopped. I listened for a few months, and then I kind of stopped because things got repetitive. And I think that's when like the bear apocalypse happened or something. And then when COVID came down, like it was like February, when they started talking about COVID and stuff, that's when I went back because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go listen to Owen because, and I never had a problem with him. It just became to me like kind of repetitive, you know. But then when the COVID happened, I'm like, I need to go somewhere where there's logos, you know. I need to find some information that I haven't thought of. So that was, you know, Owen is the best place for that. And then that's when I got more involved with like talking with bears.
Yeah, so for me, like I first started listening in the Steven Crowder days, and so like that's how I got exposed to Owen. And so when Owen was sitting in the spot where that gay little wine dude is now sitting, like Owen used to sit there, and I was like, that guy's really funny. Like he's my favorite part of the show. And I would listen to Steven Crowder for like over a year, and then eventually Owen hosted the show, and I was like, yes, this is the best Steven Crowder episode ever. And then after that whole fallout, because Owen was just so honest, I was like, holy fuck, I've been deceived by the Crowder. And then there was just after the Crowder fallout, that's when Owen really started to get into these various forms of gravy, and that's when I really got hooked on him, because I had been researching a lot of these topics before Owen ever mentioned them. And so when Owen first started talking about like the moon landing and flat Earth and like all these other like JFK like assassination, like all these crazy conspiracy theories, I was like, no fucking way. There's like someone who's famous who's talking about the shit I've been researching for years now.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
Yeah. That was a trip. What was I going to say? You were saying something. What was the first part you mentioned? The
Crowder bit.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever thought about this? So, like, Joe Rogan is some sort of a gatekeeper, right? And in a sense, he operated as a gatekeeper still for Owen. Even though Owen, like, hates him, seemingly so and whatnot, it was...
I wouldn't say
like,
hate. Just nothing.
Maybe not hate, but like it was still he went through the gate and he blew like okay, so he was kind of a big comedian, but then he was kind of off, like, and so he was, he was out, he had nothing going on really. Then he went into Rogan land, and then he left Rogan land, and then he started taking off. So in a sense, it was still a gate that he crossed through that led to him having influence.
Well, so the whole process of him going through Rogan Land was the whole process of him like saying "fuck you," whatchamacallit, transgender kids.
Barataria versus Rogan Land or something, like a land of giants versus a land of like midgets and leprechauns. When you said Rogan Land, even though I think I said it, it just sounded hilarious. Are you good? What were you saying?
Yeah, so like the whole transition from Hollywood through Rogan Land to Bertaria, it was like in the middle of him being in Rogan Land, it was like the whole like, oh, transgender kids are a thing now? Fuck that, that's child abuse. And so like he was in that like transition and process. And so that's where the lines kind of get a little bit fuzzy.
What do you mean?
Where like as he was getting kicked out of Hollywood, he was beginning to develop this this morality that we now so affectionately associate with.
Yeah, I'd like to see the timeline, because I don't know the exact timeline, because you know what I do. I use my imagination, and so
yeah.
I fill in the gaps with my imagination. But I do want to see the timeline. When did he leave? When did he make the comment about the trans? When did he get blackballed? So
I'll talk to Coddington about that, because I've talked to Cod a couple of times, and so I'll see if I can get his attention and talk to him and see if we can make like some sort of like.
When was he basically when he was at his worst? Not at his worst as a human, as a person, as a man, but when he was at his worst financially. I think that was
so like
New York when he had to go work with his brother or something, cutting down trees. Was probably
so I'm thinking, but to give a better perspective on that, what the point you're looking for, this point specifically, how do we identify this point in his life? But I think to really flesh out the importance of that point is before that point is where was he in Hollywood? What were his accomplishments? in relation with the perspective of time to this point that you describe. And then from this point that you describe, like, when did he move to New York? Was he already in New York when this point was taken? Then when did he move to Washington? Then when did he move to Idaho? And
Right.
so, like, you're trying to identify this point, and I agree. That is a very interesting thing to identify, but I think it would be more, I guess, valuable for the understanding of the Bears is to expand on this point and go like Hollywood and then post Hollywood, and then like
But I
kind
still
of do a
want to
timeline
see.
from there.
I still want to see where his Rogan appearances play on his timeline, because I have my theory that his Rogan appearances, he walked through that gate and then got a jump in influence. I might be wrong, and I'm not saying that he's like it's all a big psyop or anything like that. I mean, I'm just saying that sometimes people carry a gift, and even though Rogan might be part of the dark side and all that, it doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't have a gift. That he's not.
Well, yeah, like, just given the size of the Joe Rogan podcast, it would make sense that a like middleman, like, because honestly, that's where like Owen's very honest about this. He was like a middleman comedian who had a very high skill set, but it was because he didn't like talk to the beast. Very middleman comedian, kind of like Daywalker. He just got on Joe Rogan, and so yeah, he was on Joe Rogan 3 times in 1 year. So because of how big the Joe Rogan audience was, in addition to in that time period, he was also on Steven Crowder, another individual with a very large audience. I would imagine it's only logical that Owen Benjamin's like if we looked at like the Podbean or the Apple or whatever the fuck podcasts, that you would see a natural increase in his viewership or audio listeners during that time period because of his exposure to Joe Rogan and Steven Crowder.
Right.
However, that being said, is I wouldn't necessarily say that all increases in viewership is necessarily a positive thing. It just so like that. That's where Romans 8:28 comes into play, where it's like if you use this increased viewership for like the devil, then bad news bears. But if you use this increased viewership for the Lord, even if you see short-term like persecution, God will use this short-term persecution for His glory in your life long-term, as long as you're called according to His purpose.
Right. Someone at Bosnia asked, "What's the concern?" There's no concern. I just was just theorize. It's a spiritual thing where it's like I'm like, if Joe Rogan is a sort of gatekeeper,
We're
that
just pondering right now. That's all.
yeah, there's no concern. I mean, I can be skeptic by nature. I can get doubting of anybody. I can doubt myself. So, but then at the end of
You
the day,
doubt yourself? How dare you? If you doubt yourself, how can you possibly make potentially valuable investments?
dude, that's a funny thing. Yeah, investments. I do that a lot. I'll have an idea, then I'll listen to somebody, and then they'll talk me out of the idea. Where's Bell River? Bell River, I wanted to buy. I said, I called up Bell River like a month ago. I'm like, Bell River, I want to buy $30,000 in Disney stock, and he's like, you shouldn't do that because blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And then like this week, Disney stock's gone up like I think 10% or 15% or something crazy this week. Like Bell River, you talked me out of a good investment.
Well, so my whole perspective on that is because a couple years back, I learned about a couple of specific Israeli oil companies in the Gaza Heights or Gaza Strips, and then the other fucking heights, whatever it is. And like on paper, like super amazing, valuable investment. And like they pay great dividends, like year on year, like great growth, blah blah, like all the stupid like stock market, Wall Street bullshit numbers you want to hear, like all great things. But when I looked into the company portfolio, like in depth, I was like, oh fuck, they're literally making money because they are persecuting other people and like causing pain and misery to like entire like ethnic groups. So, is this a good investment from a fiscal perspective? Yes. But ethically speaking, I don't want to make blood money. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And ever since like I was like the Lord allowed me to be convicted
And
like
they're
in that
pedophiles.
manner, like I really look at any investment I make, but even before making the investment is like ethically, morally, like let me do a full background check because like even if the potential investment is like really potentially profitable, I would rather make $0 and be ethical than make like $1 billion because Israel just fucking enslaved another million people.
Yeah, there's a lot of directions you can go with that, which basically means if we use that logic, then we would feel unethical doing just about anything. But either way, it's I get it. I'm with you, and they're pedophiles. But what Bosnia Bear said is very interesting. He said the claim is that Bibi is a made man, and his success via career destruction is actually orchestrated. Now that's interesting. I think I mean no, it's interesting. I think look it. I have you not ever once had a thought that Big Bear's a psyop? You've never had that thought. Now,
Oh yeah, I've thought about it, I've
okay,
processed it, and it's obvious nonsense.
I think it's pretty sure nonsense as well. Because here's the thing. Because if I look at it in a vacuum, I could easily convince myself of it for sure,
Well,
easily,
yeah, in a vacuum, you can convince yourself of anything.
basically. But the only thing I think that really makes me not go that way, although it's still there's some things that are there's some I don't know. I'm always gonna have my doubts, but that's fine.
So,
But
have
that's
you ever done a deep dive into the Reddits of Owen Benjamin and like really looked into the worst hateful people
no,
and um their attempts to discredit him and
no.
then compared those to the actual records,
That sounds like
like
the worst
public
use of
access
time.
records?
No,
Dude,
I've
it's a
never.
multiple hour deep dive. And I'm not gonna say it's worth it because it's not, because basically it proves, oh, Owen
Really?
claims to be an honest man, and after you do hours and hours of research, his claim to be an honest man is actually true. Holy fuck! Who would have thought?
Right.
Like,
I mean, the
I've
thing
done
is,
the deep dive. It was way less interesting than I thought it was. But basically, he's an honest dude.
yeah, like I'm like, you can tell a tree by its fruit. That's
Yes.
that's to me the best thing. So I'm like, I know that the people in the bear community are people that are good people that I enjoy talking to. And if Owen started this, you could tell a tree by its fruit. Um, so that's my biggest convincing factor. Actually, I think that's probably a good way to do it is to try to basically use your what is the fruit you are eating from somebody else's life, and that can determine that in some sense, although some people would probably say the fruit they eat from me is bitter. There's a lot of people that would say the truth is bitter.
Well, that depends on one's perspective. If you are engaged in a lifestyle of self-deceit, then yes, the truth is beyond bitter. But the more honest you are with oneself, which is not a like society-wide natural trait, then yeah, the truth isn't that bad. It's like, oh, this is the new truth I'm just learning. This may or may not be difficult for me, but I can process this because I'm not a weak bitch, and I'll figure it out.
Wait,
And then
is
I'll keep going on.
little lady bear here? She hasn't said a single word. I was just looking, and I don't think I've seen Scuzzy Wombat say anything either.
No, Scuzzy Wombat said what's up earlier. Also, Scuzzy Wombat, I apologize. Oh, fuck. Instagram says we got 30 seconds left. Scuzzy Wombat, I apologize for not saying hello to you earlier. I saw you check in, but I didn't say hello. We got 20 seconds left.